Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. And do I have an awesome, phenomenal guest with me today? This is actually the day I'm recording is June 21st, which is the longest day of we promote Alzheimer's awareness. Those of us who have lived with it will never forget it. Those of you who don't know about Alzheimer's, I urge you, I even beg you, please educate yourself about this disease. Brain Awareness Month also. Take care of your brain, and if you have any concerns about your memory, please consult with your primary care physician. Do not be afraid to do that. It's better to get screened and to know everything is okay, and it's better to get screened and to get to whatever you might have early, and that's the key. And believe me, I wish 13 years ago they were screening. It was after the fact, when Matt was deep into his Alzheimer's, that they started to screen at his primary care physician. So I just wanted to say that. And my disclaimer, the views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Well, with me today is Rayna Neises. Am I saying your name right, Rayna? Neises?
Neises, uh-huh.
Neises. Oh, I was close.
You were close.
Founder of Season of Caring. She is host of a Season of Caring podcast, which, let me tell you, folks, that is a wonderful podcast. I was a guest on there last year. Rayna is awesome. And, you know, if you're not already a caregiver, you will be. And I highly recommend listening to Rayna's podcast. She is author and writer of No Regrets, Hope for Your Caregiving Season. She lost both of her parents to Alzheimer's. So not only does she walk the walk, she knows it. She doesn't just talk about it. She knows what she's talking about. And I have to say, in my own personal opinion, if I was looking for someone to be for a consultant, I want someone, I would prefer someone who has personal experience, not just book knowledge. That's my opinion. And Rayna, I want to welcome you to Chatting with Betsy, and also I want you to say the name of your magazine that you were editor of so I don't get the name wrong.
Sure. Thank you, Betsy. I've started publishing a quarterly electronic magazine called Content Caregiver magazine. And I just know as a caregiver, it can feel so isolating that this is full of caregiver stories and inspiration and devotionals, scripture, just encouragement for you to be able to pick up maybe your phone while you're at the doctor's office or whatever, and just really kind of be reminded that you're not alone in the middle of the caregiving.
Yeah, that's so important. So important to feel like you're not alone, because I know I felt alone. And you were also a certified coach. What kind of coach are you, Rayna?
So my certification is actually in life and leadership coaching. So that's what I was doing before losing my dad. And then after losing my dad, I kind of made that shift to using my skills that I've learned that I can use in businesses and in all of those different areas to help caregivers. So I actually am certified by the International Coach Federation, have had professional training to be a coach, and use those skills then to support family caregivers.
Wow, that is awesome. And your business is Season of Caring. And do you consult with the caregivers? They would call you or email you?
Definitely.
Go ahead. How does that work? Do you have like a clarity call first and to go over? Okay.
Yeah, just an opportunity to kind of touch base and make sure that we're a good fit, but just to be able to see where they are and what their struggles are. And then typically with clients, I'll meet once a week for a couple of months because there's usually a lot going on. There's kind of a crisis that's brought them to me. And then eventually we get to a point where we can kind of support every couple of weeks and drop down to just whenever they actually find themselves needing it. The thing I love about coaching is coaching is not about me telling you how to solve your problem. It's about me making space and asking you questions that really gives you room to think and to really get to the heart of what you know is important to you and then help you make the action steps to get to where you want to be. I think as a family caregiver, one of the most difficult things to do is to be able to maintain your own life while you're caregiving. And I find that that's one of the keys to not being resentful or frustrated with your caregiving is being able to maintain relationships and your own goals and priorities. And so like you said, from living it myself, I found that my coaching skills, coaching myself and having coach friends talk to me, I was able to really find more clarity and make decisions that gave me the ability to have a life that I loved while I walked my dad all the way home and buried him without regrets.
That is so important, Rayna. You touched on so many golden nuggets here. That's what I love, interviewing people who have walked the walk and talk the talk, because a lot of caregivers get resentful. Oh, I gave up my life. I'm giving up this. I even found myself resentful at times, but I was working. I just didn't have enough time for me. And I know what was so difficult for me, Rayna, is getting that balance of me time, spending time with Matt, and not feeling guilty that I am spending time recharging, especially at the end of Matt's life. It was really difficult to not feel guilty.
You definitely. The end of the journey, I think, is so hard. And I often tell families, when you bring a brand new baby into your life, you don't expect everything to continue like it always has. You put your brakes on. Everything becomes about that brand new life. I think the spectrum is the same on the other end. When we're losing our loved one, we really are at the end of their life. It is unrealistic to think that we can continue anything like we've done before. We have to really focus in on just ourselves and them and allow the other things to drop by the wayside. The good news is everything in life, the reason why I call it a season of caring is because it is only a season. And sometimes I think even having that perspective helps us have hope that those things that we loved and enjoyed before that we're missing or we wish we could still do, there'll be a season again in life when you can pick those back up. But in the middle of it, it's often hard to see that.
That is so true, Rayna, so very true. Yeah, I would tell caregivers, we have to readjust to our loved ones. And sometimes we have to put away the decorations that might scare them. And we may not be able to go to see fireworks or go out socially because of the situation that our loved one has, but you will be able to do that again. And
it's hard. It's definitely a sacrifice, and I think it's funny because I use that word a little bit. I was at my dad's funeral when someone said to me, I can't believe how much you sacrificed, and I actually was a little offended by that. I never looked at it in that way. I thought, well, my gosh, look at all that my dad did for me. And so it was 4.5 years that I drove from my farm in Kansas to my dad's home, 220 miles away, and cared for him in his home. We were able to keep him home. He had a 14-year journey with his Alzheimer's. And the last 4.5 years, my sister and I teamed together and brought professional caregivers in, and we kept him at home. But I went up every weekend for a little over 2.5 years, and then the last 2 years, every other weekend, unless, like you said, things changed and we had a medical situation, which, I lived there longer as I needed to. But, yes, when I look back, sure, it was a sacrifice, but I think because I was so intentional, I made sure, that I kept my connection with my husband, and my marriage didn't suffer for that. Relationships didn't suffer. They look different. but it doesn't mean that I didn't have friendships and I didn't have those people in my life. So I think a lot of it is perspective, and that's one of the things that coaching can definitely help with, is help you to see things, maybe reframe them and see them from a little different perspective.
Yes, that is for sure. Now, you're in Kansas, so you coach people via Zoom all over the world then? Anyone could
do,
come.
and actually, yeah, definitely. And actually, I find that phone conversations are a little easier. Sometimes it's hard to cry in front of people when they're watching you on camera. So typically we will meet by phone. If someone would rather meet by Zoom, it's up to them. But I find there's a lot of ability to really hear and still pick up on, the concerns of the person just even by phone. So we can coach from anywhere, which came in handy because I was coaching while I was taking care of my dad. He was a person who went to bed early, and so I'd actually have clients scheduled in the evenings after he was in bed. So
I think what you do, Rayna, is so important. And a lot of times, caregivers, I know I felt this way. You feel alone. You feel like you have no support. You don't know what to do, where to turn to. And I'll tell you, I have to tell the audience, when my mother-in-law was diagnosed in 99, no, I should say 2000, there wasn't the information. There wasn't coaches that I know of like Rayna. There was hardly any information about Alzheimer's. And even with Matt being diagnosed in 2010, there was not the information available like it is today. I'm very happy that there is much more information. There are people like you, Rayna, that are coaches. And one of the reasons why I love doing my show is because I want to provide people resources that I didn't know of when Matt was alive. Until near the end, then I knew there was coaches. But to help people, I want people to know they're not alone. There's help out there. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's so important. My mom was actually diagnosed in 1986, and so we had no idea what it was or what to expect in so many ways. And, I think it has come a long way. We're talking a lot more about it. I think that's so important. But one of the things that I really wanted to do as I found out more and was finding more support as we lost my dad, I found Teepa Snow, and I adore Teepa. I just am amazed at how much what she teaches helps to make sense. And that's why I became a certified independent trainer with the Positive Approach to Care method. And that just allows me to go into facilities and work with families and really help them to understand what's happening in the brain in order to make sense of the behaviors. And I think that's one of the things that's so difficult about taking care of someone with dementia is there isn't any logic to it. You can't reason with the person. My mom was a lot easier going, and she really was pretty low maintenance overall through her disease, which lasted 12 years. My dad was he was a thinker. He was a go-getter. So he was definitely more of a problem solver himself. And so there were more challenges with him of just trying to do things that he had always done before and wanting to be able to continue to do, but really not having the full capacity to be able to do that. I learned what his triggers were. I now understand why they were there, whereas before I just kind of had to, blindly figure things out. And so I love the resources that are available online. It's amazing all the different things that are out there that are helping to educate and helping caregivers understand, their loved ones better so they can help care for them better.
Oh, that is so true. I often say this, Rayna, and I'm going to sound redundant, but that's okay. Education, to educate yourself about your loved one's diagnosis makes you a better caregiver, helps your loved one have a better journey, causes less stress because you know what to expect and what to do. With my mother-in-law, I did not know that hallucinations and sundowning were part of the package. I had no idea. So when she accused me of stealing and was violent, I thought she was just being a witch. I had no idea of what was going on. And I was a nurse.
Yeah.
So I didn't know about Alzheimer's. It wasn't taught back in the Stone Age when I went to school. And with Matt, when he started his hallucinations, I was prepared. I knew what to do. So I can't impress enough about education. And Tifa Snow is on YouTube. She is wonderful. And I have to tell a little story. I watched Tifa Snow's video about vision, which explained a lot to me of why Matt could not see what was in front of him. Because, and of course I was not a perfect caregiver, he would say, where's this, where's that? And I go, Matt, don't you see it? It's right in front of you. So then when I watched the video, I understood, and of course I didn't say, what do you mean you can't see it? I also explained it to the eye doctor about the, he can't see. And I told the eye doctor, watch Tifa Snow's video.
Yes. It's amazing how they don't know. It's amazing how, though that's their area of specialty, they aren't aware because they're looking at the physical, what's happening with the eyeball itself, and it can be healthy. It's the brain's ability to interpret and to really, zone in on how much information the brain can process. And that just, as the brain shrinks and the cells die, then its ability to process information becomes less and less, and so they see less and less. It's amazing. It answers so many questions, like you said, when you really begin to understand what's happening in the brain, and it does make caregiving easier, and it definitely makes your relationship with the person better. I love the statement, we do it with them, not to them, and that can make all the difference.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just in the approach, and you know what? It drives me crazy, and not judging other support groups, but for the life of me, Rayna, I don't understand why some support groups do not allow education. Like me posting a show. My show isn't about me making money. It isn't about me promoting myself. It's to educate people. Now, not all my shows are about caregiving, but the ones that are, I post in caregiving groups that will allow me. I have a group. I welcome education. I welcome people to post their podcast, to post what they do, because somebody in my group might need that. And, I feel like we're all here to help each other. So, and support each other. The more education, the better for the caregiver and their journey with their loved one is how I look at it. I definitely don't have all the answers, and that's why I welcome people to post what they do. I just think it's so important for a caregiver to know what is available to them, because, as you know, Rayna, and I'm sure you've heard this, caregivers suffer from a lot of unjustified guilt. Oh, I wish I did this. I wish I knew about that. Well, you know what? Now is your chance. If you're a caregiver in the audience, and if you're not, chances are you will be or you will need one. I recommend contacting Rayna. I look at it this way. You have nothing to lose and all to gain. And I wish I knew. And when I say to the audience, I wish I knew about a guest, I mean it, 100%. I wish I knew about resources to have helped me be a better caregiver at the time. But, we do what we do with the knowledge we have at the time. But now there's a lot of knowledge available. And I had to ask you, how did you start your podcast, The Season of Caregiving?
It was really just an opportunity because I'm here on the farm and network. I actually started it in February of 2020, so I started it right before the world shut down. But it was just a matter of being able to, like you said, knowing and learning about what other people were doing and feeling like we just need to support each other and we need to get this information out. And that was where the podcast came, was just to be able to offer, that my perspective and my experience, and then bring other guests in and be able to share with them. So primarily I have caregivers, and they might not be, quote unquote, I hear this a lot, I'm not an expert. Like, no, you're not an expert, but you are an expert in the person you're caring for. And so being able to share that, I think, is really important, and it allows us to all hear our own stories in someone else's story. And so my tagline is going along, we want to live content, love well, and care without regrets. And I think the only way we can do that is by, like you said, educating ourselves and understanding that we are doing the best we can do. And as long as we're continuing to improve, then we don't have anything to regret. So I'm a person who likes to look back and say, I did the best that I could at the time. And when that didn't work, I found something else, and I just keep moving forward. I think that regret makes us look backward and feel shameful and sad, where hope lets us look forward and find answers and be able to grow and gain wisdom. So
that is very true. And I've been saying for years, even before I had Chatting with Betsy on Facebook, I would say, caregivers, share your story. Share your story and show your loved one's journey. And before I had my own show, I was on Jeannie White's show. She's station manager. She had a show for caregivers to come and talk and, share their experience. And it was really difficult getting people to come on. Do you find that? Do you have difficulty getting people to come on and talk?
Yeah, it is. They would call themselves I'm just a regular caregiver. They are more challenging to kind of draw out and be willing to talk. Those of us that have written books about our experience, we have a tendency to be a little more talkative. So I do find that authors are often great guests because they have lived it and they're wanting to share their story. And so oftentimes people have written a book, but I love to have anyone. So if you're listening and you would like to be a guest, definitely contact me. It's just visit aseasonofcaring.com, and the podcast page has a little place right there to email me and let me know that you'd like to be a guest, and we can set up a time to talk.
Awesome. And your podcast is all over the many different platforms. And a great show. And, yes, I want to get to your book, No Regrets, Hope for Your Caregiving Season. And that is so true. How many caregivers have regrets? I know I do. I did. So I always ask authors this, Rayna, what motivated you to write your book? I know your experience.
Actually, at my dad's funeral, part of the team included having him attend a day stay program, and the director of the day stay came up to me at the funeral and said, you and your sister need to write a book. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. And she said, no, I'm serious. And I said, why? Why do you say that? And she said, because you guys, the way that you honored your dad and you continue to let him be who he is all the way through his journey, she said, it's just different than what I see for most families. And you have a story to tell. And so I was like, oh, okay, thanks. I just kind of went on my little merry way. But as I went through the grieving process and found myself just really kind of at that point in life where it's like, okay, Lord, what are we doing next? He was like, yeah, I really want you to write that book. And so my goal is just to be able to challenge a little bit, I think, our perception of how we care for the elderly, of how important we are in their lives. And though we might not be the ones who can do the hands-on caregiving, we still have an important role. And so it's the first 10 chapters are just how my sister and I did that. How did we handle medication? How did we handle doctors? Hiring and firing of help. My mom was a homebody. She was a homemaker, and so the things that we kept her brain engaged with through her disease were folding laundry and drying dishes that weren't weren't wet necessarily. We kept her engaged. She loved music. We sat for hours on the couch listening to Elvis and singing along. But that was who my mom was more of an introvert, more of a homebody. My dad was more of an extrovert. He played professional baseball. He was an accountant. He was always active. And we actually kept him playing volleyball 3 times a week until 2 years before he passed away. He continued to go to the gym 3 times a week until about a year before he passed away. And so, we really kept him engaged in who he was and what he loved to do. Some of my favorite memories are I brought a ping pong table into the house because I had picked up one of those little nets you put on the kitchen table, and we played one night, and he had so much fun. We both had so much fun that I went out and found a used ping pong table and moved the formal furniture out of the formal living room and moved the ping pong table in, and we played ping pong 3 weeks before he passed away. So we just found things that he loved, and we kept him engaged. And it really helped with a lot of the behaviors that people struggle with because we kept him engaged in things. And so learning how to do that was something I felt like I needed to share. And then the last 6 chapters of my book are just some of the tools that I found helped me with my self-care. And we talk about self-care all the time, and caregivers roll their eyes every time you say it. But there's some real practical things you can do that help you, keep your sanity through this process. And so I narrowed down some of those things that I felt like were most important to me and helped me kind of guide the ship the best that I could. And so those are the things that I included in my book.
That sounds like a fantastic book. Where can people buy it?
It is available to all retailers. I also have a special gift edition that I will send to you signed with a journal and a couple other things that you can order on A Season of Caring as well.
Oh, okay. Can you give us one of your self-care tips?
So one of the things I think is most important, I just use the word intentional over and over again. Everything I did was intentional, but one of the things that I intentionally did was every time I left my dad's house, it was almost a 4-hour drive back to the farm, and I would ask myself some questions. And the first one was, how am I? And that made me stop to think about it, because so many times we just keep rushing to the next thing and we don't check in on ourselves. Sometimes I was sad. Sometimes I was frustrated. Sometimes I was mad at somebody else on the team that wasn't doing what I thought they should be doing. Sometimes I was happy because of emotion, times and experiences that we had had while I was there. So I checked in on how I was. And then I would ask myself, what do I need? Do I need more rest? Do I need to eat better? What's going well? What's not going well? And then I would ask myself the same questions about my dad. How's Dad doing? What's going well for him? What's not going well for him? What changes do we need to make? And so from that, I would really process through what was happening. And I think that's part of what we have to do as caregivers. You talked about needing your alone time. Most of the time, the alone time we need is to clear the clutter and really think through what's happening and process any feelings that we have, because I believe that one of the toughest things about caregiving is the emotions. And if we don't take time to deal with our emotions, that's when we find ourselves burnt out and in trouble.
Yeah, so true. I can hug you for that, Rayna. That's so true. I was just interviewing a man Monday, and his wife had died of cancer. And he talked about the emotions, and from the man's point of view, which was very interesting. And we need to sit with our pain and our emotions and validate them instead of running away from them, because they will cause illness and they will come back and bite you in the butt.
Definitely. I just finished a course called Finding Peace in Grief, and it's a resource for brokenhearted caregivers. And it really, I think grief is the key to a lot of what we're feeling. And, it's a core emotion that we oftentimes don't acknowledge, especially when we're caregiving, because we think, well, we're not grieving because the person's still here. But definitely with something like Alzheimer's or dementia, we're grieving that it's a long, slow passing of the person. We're losing them over a long period of time. But the same thing's true even when you're caregiving for somebody who has cancer. There's grief over the change in the relationship. When you move from spouse to caregiver, there's grief in a little bit of that. You've lost a part of the relationship you've always had, and it has to become something more or different. And so I think a lot of times we don't realize there's multiple kinds of grief. And in the course, I talk about how grief impacts our brain, how it impacts our body, and then how we can process through grief. And so just really starting to look at some of those things, I think, can really have an impact on, how well we're doing and how long we can do this caregiving thing.
True. Oh, that is so true, Rayna. Amen to what you just said, because I know that with 10 years of caregiving for Matt, I grieved from diagnosis and with every skill lost.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sense of grief. And in the beginning, I was thinking, well, why do I feel this way? Because I was on Facebook then. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like I'm grieving when he's still alive? And it wasn't until I joined Facebook in 2014 and got to know Caregivers and understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling and realizing I wasn't alone. And, of course, when Matt died, that was a whole different, grieving.
Grief.
And I am learning to integrate my grieving with my present, with my living. And I realized I could be happy and sad at the same time. And me personally, I can only speak for myself. For me, I will always have the pain of Matt's loss. It has changed in its intensity. It's still there.
Yeah.
Special days are, hit it back home strong. But I want to live my life and enjoy my life, because life is short. Bible says making it to 70 is a gift. Anything after 70 is a blessing. I'm 65. I'll be 66 in December. That doesn't give me long, folks. I can't spend it moping. I can't. And
I always challenge people, too, to say, sorry. I always challenge people, too, to say, especially those of us that are children and it's our parents, we are their legacy. And you are Matt's legacy. There is nothing about a legacy that wants to be closed up in a house, and just sad and depressed all the time. They want us to live our life, and I believe that's true even as we're caregiving as well as after they're gone. They want us to live our life and to be their legacy. And in order to do that, we have to be healthy. And so we have to find ways to do that by processing our emotions, by taking care of our physical bodies, all of those things.
Yes, I have a saying, and I know it's harsh. I am a Jersey girl. I am my father's daughter. And my father had Alzheimer's also. When self-care is literally a matter of life and death for the caregiver. And that's the truth, folks. Yes. If you don't take care of yourself during caregiving, you're not going to be able to enjoy life after. You have a right to enjoy life during and after caregiving, but you have to take care of yourself because, as you know, Rayna, the percentage of caregivers that die is astronomical, and that get sick afterwards is it's high. And it's sad because I look back and I have to give God the glory. I am very thankful that God gave me the strength, because only by God's grace did I get through caregiving. I have no other explanation but that. And if anyone out there is agnostic or an atheist, that's your business. I'm not here to preach religion. I'm just telling you what helped to me through my caregiving journey. And even now, through grieving, I feel that Matt is with me. I really do. I just feel his presence in many ways.
Yeah, I think it's all so much harder than we expect it to be,
Yes.
again, this is June 21st, as you said at the beginning of the show, and June 25th will be the 5-year anniversary of my dad's passing, and so it's a heavy time. It's Father's Day is. I love to remember him. I love our memories, but it is hard. It's an anniversary of a difficult time. This was a really hard, week when I look back at 5 years ago of just not realizing literally that he was at the end of life until 3 days before he was gone. So there are so many things that are difficult about caregiving, and faith is definitely how I got through it. And I think it's so important for us to find what our self-care looks like. And I agree with you. I think it is the most important thing we can do. But I do think it's difficult because what works for you might not work for me. And that's why I think caregiver stories are so important, so that we can find what does work for us.
Yes. I'll tell you what I used to do. I would go in the bathtub and play John Denver. I love John Denver music. And I would pretend I'm in the mountains. He has a song, Matthew, about being on the Kansas farm. So I would imagine being in a farm in Kansas. It helped me get through. And sometimes, I highly recommend if someone is struggling with any depression, suicidal thoughts, which are very common with caregivers, seek your primary care physician for referrals in your area. I went for counseling, not ashamed to say it. I went for counseling when Matt was in the middle of his journey, and I went for grief counseling after through my senior center, offers it for free. And now I'm not ashamed to say this. I am seeing a psychologist for post-traumatic caregiving stress. And it's a real thing. I'm glad it's finally being recognized. And you know what? If you have to talk to someone, please, people, it's not a weakness. I really want to make that clear. It's not a weakness if you need help. That's a sign of strength, actually, to say, I need help. And people say, oh, Betsy, aren't you ashamed to say that you need help? No, I'm not. I hope when I say I'm going for help, that it will encourage someone in my audience to say, oh, if Betsy could go for help, I could go for help. It's no shame in going for therapy. And I'll tell you what, I've been helped tremendously by counseling. I'm very grateful. I waited till I had Medicare my supplement to go back to a psychologist I saw when Matt was in mid-journey because I liked him so much. And, we do what we have to do even after the caregiving journey. Rayna, I just love talking to you. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would love to have you come back again in the fall and do a show about grieving, especially before holidays. I would love that because that's a tough time, very tough time.
It is. Yeah, it really is. I would love to come back and be able to share some of the things that I've learned through research and then some of the things that I've lived myself. So definitely.
Yes, I know. From the end of November to January is tough for me because that's not just holiday time. It's when Matt was dying. And it's been tough. I go into like a fog. And I'm learning why. And, and I'm learning now, 3.5 years after the fact, that how grieving changes your brain, and I think that would be a great show. I would thank you for coming on today and sharing your story. Rayna, how can people get in touch with you?
The best way to reach me would be at aseasonofcaring.com. You can reach me email at Rayna, Rayna, at aseasonofcaring.com. I look forward to, I'm also on all social medias, so you can reach out that way, but I'd be happy to support and talk with anybody about what it looks like to do coaching or even just to pick up a resource, and definitely check out the podcast. So
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you give people resources for their area when
I do not.
You coach them?
That's a great question.
That's okay.
But because, just where I'm located, it makes it hard for me to know. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I feel like the quality of resources vary from location to location. So just because I've had a good experience in Kansas doesn't mean you're going to have a good experience where you are. So I'm a little hesitant on recommendations unless I know and have met somebody, and feel comfortable with what I'm recommending. So I encourage you by sharing where you might explore and then have you go off on the hunt instead of being the one who feeds you that. So.
Well, thank you. That's an honest answer, and I love that. Very true. Well, thank you. I'm going to let me know if I say your last name right. Rayna Neises. 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 Oh, Neises.
Neises.
I like the nicest person.
There you go, like the nicest person you ever met.
Yes, Rayna Neises. It was a pleasure talking to you. Folks, you heard Rayna Neises, and she is the founder season of Caring, host of Season of Caring podcast, author and writer of No Regrets, Hope for Your Caregiving Season, and also editor of the Content magazine. I really recommend checking Rayna out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Find out how she can help you. And I just love talking to people like you, Rayna, and sharing wonderful resource that you are. You are awesome. Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it. And I look forward to having you back in the fall. Definitely. I will be in touch. I want to schedule you. I know you're a busy person.
Well, thank you, Betsy, for the opportunity to talk with your audience. I love what you're doing, and I just love how real you are, because I think that's exactly what we need is people who are connecting at the heart level. So thanks for what you're doing as well. And I look forward to coming back in the fall.
Oh, thank you so much, Rain. That means a lot to me. Yes, what you hear from me, folks, that's me. Me being me. Well, I want to thank you, Rayna, again. All the information about Rayna will be in the blog that Jeannie White, her station manager, writes. And Jeannie produces the show. So thank you, Jeannie White, for all that you do. And thank you to Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And thank you to the listeners who listen, subscribe, share. Please share this show to help other people. This is what I want to do, folks. I want to help as many people as possible. And I can only do it with your help. So please share the show. If you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, I suggest that you do. It's for free. I'm on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, YouTube, to name just a few. You don't want to miss phenomenal guests I have on my show. And I have a variety show, which is something for everyone. It's not always all about caregiving, but I think even if you're a caregiver or not, you could benefit from listening to my guests. And a lot of it is about, self-help. Who can't use that? I know I definitely can. And I learn from every guest that comes on, and I'm very grateful and blessed to be a host and to do what I do. And Matt was and always will be my catalyst. And when you share the show, you are helping honoring Matt's memory also, so I appreciate that. You could follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy, middle initial E, Wurzel, Wurzel, and you can see that I gave a toast to Matt on Father's Day, and you might want to watch that reel. And you could see pictures of my family, and I would appreciate it if you would just check out my Facebook page. And I have a support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement on Facebook. And that's what I have to say today, folks. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, shine your light bright, because if we all did that, it would be a much kinder, brighter world. Until we chat again, be safe, And talk to you next time. Bye-bye now. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate Rural Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.